Good morning, Knicks Nation. Today is Monday, the 21st day of March, 2022. I hope you had a good weekend. I hope your weekend was healthy and safe and that you had enjoyable time. And as far as your family, I hope that the needs of you and your family in terms of food, shelter, and clothing are being met. Blessings upon those on this Monday morning that work in the healthcare field and the first responders who are trying to save lives 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Blessings upon those also that pick up garbage to keep streets and sidewalks clean, and those that make deliveries for our convenience, and double blessings on the men and women trying to help deliver, rescue, and recover the boys and girls, the men and women, the children, the toddlers, the teenagers from sex slavery, human trafficking, child pornography, adult pornography, child molestation, pedophilia, prostitution, child prostitution, and double curses on the profiteers, the perverts, and the perpetrators who traffic in human misery involving in these so-called industries. Finally, blessings upon the homeless. Nearly 600,000 men, women, and children right now on the streets of the United States of America, homeless, and millions around the world without roofs over their head. Blessings upon them also, for theirs is the kingdom. There was a basketball game last night. The New York Knicks lost to the Utah Jazz last night, and it was 108-93. The Knicks are now 30-41. The sad thing about yesterday is I wasn't surprised. And not only was I not surprised, and many of us feel the same way, we can predict exactly what's going to happen because the Knicks have been playing the same way the entire season. Friday, the Knicks won a game against Washington, and we had a video. I think I did a video yesterday before the game. And I told y'all that was an anomaly, that win. The 8-man rotations, the same tired veterans that he plays, and a focus on a shortened crew of hand-picked players was going to doom the Knicks. And coming into town was the Utah Jazz with Donovan Mitchell, and with a much better basketball team, and they showed it. And generally, if you've seen Knicks losses this year, which have been 41 of them, I can tell you the flow of the game. So the Knicks started off strong. Evan Fournier started off shooting well. Everybody started off very well in the first quarter. Got a first quarter lead. Then they started to lose the lead. Third quarter, they're down now. They're down 12. End of the third quarter, Tom begins to sub in his bench. Starts his bench the beginning of the fourth quarter. The Knicks start to dwindle the lead of the Utah Jazz down. They start to make a run. And then Thibs subs back in his starters. The Knicks proceed to lose the lead, to not only stop the momentum, but the league starts to balloon, and the Knicks lose the game. And also, as we have seen, Julius Randle mentally collapses, and starts acting like a spoiled child, and that makes it worse. That's been the season. Now the thing is, and that was last night's game. Now the thing is, there were fans that actually came on my channel from Minnesota Timberwolves fans and Chicago Bull fans who tried to warn me about Tom Thibodeau. Warn me about what, you might ask? Well, so maybe you're not asking now because you already know. He has a penchant for overplaying veterans and underplaying players he needs to develop. And sample was last night, and this has been going on all season. When the Knicks were making a run, they had a combination of young players making that run. You had Emmanuel Quickly, you had Obi Toppin, Jericho Sims, Deuce McBride, Quentin Grimes. They were involved in making the run. Obi Toppin was particularly active last night. Obi Toppin is in his second year. Very talented. Very talented, Obi Toppin. Last night he scored in 3 different ways. He got the ball in the mid post, did a nice move to get to the basket and finish, hit a 3-pointer, and of course finished at the rim as well. His defense is 100% improved from last year. He is not yet an all-NBA defender, but he has learned how to use his length. He recovers nicely on defense. He's really come a long way defensively. Very adequate at this point, I would say. Not subpar at all. Consistent effort. And he was going pretty well. And of course, Quickly was going pretty well, along with the whole unit. And as they are getting into a flow, and see in basketball what I mean by getting into a flow now, it takes a unit some time to mesh so that they're playing at their maximum level as a unit. With everything that has happened this year as far as injuries and inconsistent playing time, the second unit in COVID, the second unit was out of flow for a good part of the season, the mid part especially. But having been together from last year, and then with Derrick Rose being out, that also hurt. But as much as people like to blame the absence of Derrick Rose on the underperformance of the second unit as opposed to last year, it's more than Derrick. I'm not saying Derrick Rose did not hurt. The loss of Derrick did not hurt. Obviously it did, but they could have overcome that. But situations like last night have been too prevalent. So they were meshing, they were flowing, they were playing well together, and they were coming back and changing the momentum of a game, or the game against Utah, so that it looked like eventually the Knicks might get back the lead, and they've done that before. But then Tom Thibodeau subbed out Obi Toppin, subbed out Emmanuel Quickly, subbed out every one of those guys, and put back in the starters. And again, as has happened most of the 41 losses this year, the Knicks lost. Now, we understand Tom Thibodeau is a competitive coach. And I was speaking just over the last couple of days about my admiration for his love for the game of basketball and NBA basketball, and his competitive nature causing him to go to play the way, to coach the way he's used to coaching. But at this point, the Knicks are 30-41. There's very little chance that they will make the play. In fact, they have a game against the Atlanta Hawks on national TV tomorrow. And they usually play well on national TV. And especially this year against the Hawks, they've pretty much had the Hawks number. But now the Hawks are battling for their own play-in spot. So at this point, it's going to be a very competitive game. And we already know what Tom's going to do. You already know how this is going to play out. So if they lose that game, they are right now 5 full games behind Atlanta for the final play-in spot, with 11 games left. If they lose tomorrow, they will lose a full game. It will become 6 games behind Atlanta with 10 games left. Again, a couple weeks ago, I mentioned Leon Rose has to step in right now if you want to get any type of development. And see, my focus is, some of you agree, some of you disagree. I can't help that. My focus is on Deuce McBride, because the Knicks' biggest need is at point guard. And we have one there, and we don't know what we have. I keep hearing there were some people that want to tell me how Deuce McBride's a 2nd-round pick and he's not that good. And the thing that bothers me about that is you haven't seen him enough to know if he's good or bad. And when I say that, I mean, for example, let's take Emmanuel Quickly. Emmanuel Quickly's been playing really good ball since the All-Star break. I think we can all see that. Since the All-Star break, he's averaging almost 15 points a game, shooting 47% from the field, averaging like 5-6 assists a game. He's been playing tremendous from the All-Star break on. That's very good. But I think we can agree prior to the All-Star break, he was terrible on every aspect of the game. Okay, except foul shooting. Couldn't shoot the ball, wasn't keeping his head up, wasn't playing really consistent defense. He's had a terrible season. But after the All-Star break, he started playing well. Well, what does all that mean? That means Tom Thibodeau stuck with him through his bad streak, believed in him, believed in his talent, and eventually he got out the negative streak and turned it around. I'm saying if he'd have done that with Obi and with Deuce, the Knicks probably would have won 10 more games this year. But he has a very short leash on some guys, an extremely long leash on others. And it's irrational. It's irrational. So that Julius Randle can push a referee, he could knock a computer out of one of the assistants' hands who's trying to show him something. He could go 1 for 20. He could saunter back on defense. And he's still going to play 35 to 40 minutes. Okay? RJ Barrett can struggle shooting. He can struggle defensively. He's still going to play 35 to 40 minutes. And I'm not saying in RJ's case, we can see, obviously he's turned the corner. But again, it's the commitment to his talent, the belief in him, the letting him at 21 play through all his mistakes that caused that blossoming to happen. Julius Randle is in his 8th season. There's very little upside. There's no upside left for Julius Randle. I thought they might have been after last year, but as we look at the body of work from the 8 years Julius Randle has been in the NBA, last year was an aberration. Somebody will point to the 20 and 10 stat line. He's always been a 20-10 guy. When Julius was in New Orleans, he was a 20-10 guy. But we used to call it empty stats, like a sugar high. Like, it doesn't mean anything. It's not helping your team win. Whereas last year, his stats helped the team win. This year, we're 30 and 41. And so Thibs will continue to push him out there. We see Evan Fournier now on pace to break the Knicks record for the number of three-pointers made in a season, to break John Stark's record, which is more than 25 years old. But, of course, we have seen from the beginning of the season, again, until basically after the All-Star break, Evan wasn't consistent in his shooting. In fact, he was wildly inconsistent. His defense, horrible. And last night, that showed also. And then he starts now finding his stroke over, since the All-Star break, he's been finding his stroke. And he will continue to get minutes, regardless. Okay. Alec Burks is a forward, a small forward, or a two guard, a wing player that's been playing heavy minutes at point guard. And the coach Thibodeau says, well, I like his size. You could like his haircut. You could like his sneakers. He can't play the point. But in his stubbornness, Thibodeau will not sit him or move him to his proper position so that he can play. Even if he wanted to play Emmanuel Quickly at the point guard. Emmanuel Quickly would be much better. Even though he is not a point guard, he'll be much better than Alec Burks. And so, as people had told me, he buries Obi Toppin, a number 8 pick. He buries Deuce McBride, the best defender on the team. He's now playing Jericho Sims because they being the Knicks management, has an understanding that there's a high likelihood that Mitchell Robinson will sign somewhere else, which is an indictment of the New York Knicks, having spent 4 seasons in New York, coming from a raw 19-year-old player to now second in the league in offensive rebounds, top 5 in the league in blocks, and still getting better, and is now going to take his talents to another team. So they're playing Jericho Sims. First off, and then we also understand by this behavior of Tom Thibodeau, he's probably got some assurance that he's coming back next season. Okay. I don't know. Okay. I say I don't know what's going to happen because I don't, but let's put it this way. I would like, once the Knicks are mathematically eliminated and there's really no need to continue to play these veterans, I would like the management to come and tell Tom, as they have done, listen, man, let's play these young guys and let's leave the veterans on the bench for the rest of the season. I'd like them to do that, because Tom is not going to do that. He's not going to. So Leon, Worldwide West, they need to do this. And they need to do it for a number of reasons. Number one, if the Knicks, and I think this is a big summer coming up for the Knicks, a big summer. We're in year two of our rebuild. And even if you wanted to go forward with the rebuild, you got to see what you have in Deuce McBride. You got a point guard problem. You got to see what you have. Is he a bench piece? Is he a starting level point guard? Because really, we don't know. We see what he did in G League, right? And he's averaging almost 30 points a game, 11 assists a game in G League. We've seen him do serious business last year in Summer League. But that doesn't, of course, it gives you an indication that he might be able to play on the NBA level like that. But until you play him, you don't know. And so, if we're out of playoff contention, you want to see what you have. You want to see what you have in Obi Toppin. They drafted Obi Toppin because that year they were planning to trade Julius Randle. And they were drafting his heir apparent. But because of the lack of playing time, because he hasn't been played in a way that supports his talent, his hard work, his effort, and lets him play through all his mistakes till he learns, we really don't know how good Obi could be. People guess and say, oh, he's going to be this, he's going to be that. Everybody wants to be the superstar coach from the sidelines, but until we play him 20, 30 minutes a game, we don't know what we have. Okay, I happen to think he can be a very good replacement for Julius Randle. But we don't know. So hopefully we get Obi playing, 28 minutes a game for these last 10 games. We want to see what we have. We want to see what we have with Jericho Sims, and we've been seeing that. And I think Jericho Sims is going to be pretty good. A guy that was picked at the 58th pick of the second round. That's a really good value for the Knicks. And I think he could be our starter in the absence of Mitchell Robinson. I hope they would go after Mo Bamba, who is available. The Magic have settled pretty much on Wendell Carter Jr. as their starting center. And he's good. Which Mo Bamba, is also good. They can't keep both of them because they also got Mo Wagner as the backup center. So they don't need all three of those guys. And Mo Bamba's from New York. I think he's available. So I hope they would go get him. We'll have a video on that soon, but I hope they go get him and pair him with Jericho Sims. But we got to see what we have. The young players that played together, basically the Summer League team that played together in bringing the Knicks back last night. I'd like to see that continue. I'd like to see that those guys continue to get their opportunities to play. Obi, Quentin, Jericho, Quick, and then of course Deuce with RJ, Mitchell Robinson. We want to see how those guys mesh and what they do, because if they actually are as good as I think they are, they would make Burks, Fournier expendable. They would make Burks and Fournier expendable. And so you would need to, and Randle. Look, I like Julius Randle. Julius Randle is very talented. I respect him as a man, how he handles his business as a man. But on the basketball court, We're not getting the value for $117 million. We're just not. We're not getting the value and the consistency that you would like for a guy that you have signed to be the face of your franchise, the guy that you have signed to be your number one option. He is not a number one option. He never really was, but we were hoping that he might develop into that off of last year, but he has seriously regressed. He always was a strong rebounder. He still is. But for the drama, the inconsistency, and the price, we could do better. We could do better. So I would like to see them trade him over the summer and just be done with this. Tom Thibodeau is obviously coming back. And so if that's the case, Leon has to structure the roster, to take advantage of what we have in young players. We got to see what we have. And if you're going to make a trade for a player, so for example, Ian Begley mentioned that if he was a betting man, he would bet the Knicks are going to trade this year's pick. I can see that happening. The exceptions would be if you got a top 3 pick. If you got a top 3 pick, you're going to probably have to keep that guy because, like I said, I can't see a Jabari Smith, a Paolo Banchero, even a Jaden Ivey being traded. If you get one of those guys and you're fortunate enough to the balls land your way, you got to keep that guy. So then they would definitely be a trade. So we will have to see where the Knicks land. But if they land where they're predicted to land, which is in the 10 range, they're going to trade that pick. They're going to package that pick with either young players and or a Julius Randle, and they're going to make a deal for another player. I don't know who, but that's what they're going to do. Because when you're on the trade market, everything's negotiable, right? So some teams, again, say Gilgeous Alexander is not leaving. So some of y'all really are, riding that. It's not going anywhere. He's not going anywhere. But most players, you can at least pick up the phone and call about them and see what you can get. I don't think De'Aaron Fox is leaving Sacramento because I don't think Sacramento they made a huge mistake in trading Tyrese Halliburton. They made a huge mistake. That's going to come back to haunt them for a long time. Indiana is not that stupid, so they're not trading Tyrese Halliburton. So I don't know what they're going to get. People look at DeJounte Murray. It depends on what directions the Spurs want to go. He might be available. He might not. I don't know. But the Knicks, that's where the Knicks' job is. That's what Leon Rose's job is. He's supposed to comb the league and see what's available. Talk to the agents and see who wants to be out. Then, of course, there's the Donovan Mitchell rumors. And if you're Utah, you got a 25-year-old superstar. 25. That's how old Donovan Mitchell is. And so a young superstar is going to cost you. Okay? So we'll have to see what happens with that. Without Donovan Mitchell, the Utah, they're just not going to be good without Donovan Mitchell. Last night he had 36 points. He was pretty much unstoppable. He's pretty much scored whenever he wanted to. And so, a guy like that, you don't just give up, for anything. So we're going to have to see what happens. He may want to trade out of Utah. That might be a true rumor. If it is, Utah has his rights for the next 3 seasons. They have his rights. So, that's going to cost a lot. Okay. And we have to decide. You're talking about a Carmelo Anthony style trade. If you remember the Carmelo Anthony trade, you're talking about a Carmelo Anthony style trade. A lot of young pieces involved, draft picks involved. And then of course there's got to be a contract because, Donovan Mitchell is making I think he's got $98 million due to him over the next 3 years. So he's making in excess of about $33 million a year. So you got to match the salaries, also. So you got to take your salaries. You got to get your draft picks. You're going to get your young players. It's going to be a big thing, and we'll see if the Knicks have the assets to do it. Because Utah doesn't have to trade him. And they don't have to trade him to the Knicks if he wants out. So that's going to be interesting to see. I'm dubious as to whether it is going to happen. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. I really don't. less than 50% chance. I'm not saying it's, which means I'm not saying it's impossible. You can't say impossible in the NBA, but likelihood is very small. So the Knicks will have to try to rebuild the right way, which means with your young players, your draftees, right, and your coaching. You're going to have to rebuild like that. Tom Thibodeau is not the coach for that. He thinks if Obi plays 8 minutes that he could say, I play the young people. Or if Deuce plays 3 minutes, I'm playing Deuce. Deuce is playing. He doesn't either want to understand or understand that you should be playing them the way you're playing quickly, or the way RJ is playing. You should be playing them like that. He doesn't understand that. It seems to be one of the few coaches in the league that doesn't understand that, as many other teams do understand. So anyway, we're going to see what happens going forward. Tomorrow he's going to try it out the same rotation that he's always tried it out, unless Worldwide West and them call him into the HR office and have that second conversation about this. He'll try out the same rotation, and you'll get the same result tomorrow in Madison Square Garden. They'll come out to a big lead. Atlanta will start to come back. He'll bring in his bench, and the bench will either get the lead back or close the gap. He'll bring back Julius Randle and the starters, and they'll lose the game. Now, let me see. I'm looking at Atlanta. I want to see who's playing. John Collins is out because he's got something wrong with his ring finger on his shooting hand. They did a non-surgical procedure. They gave him an anti-inflammatory injection in his sprained right ring finger. So he'll probably play if that's the case. He was out from this is from March 18th. He was out then. He'll probably play. But if he's the only guy missing out of their rotation, Atlanta's pretty deep. I mean, Trae Young, Kevin Huerter, DeAndre Hunter, Clint Capella. They got Gallinari coming off the bench, but they don't actually play Kevin Knox that much. He's not been a factor. He's not even been in the rotation at all. So I don't know. It's not like they go deeper than Gallinari at the 4. McMillan's a lot like Thibs, but he does play his young players a little bit more. And plus, they got Bogdanovich and Lou Williams, and they like the Delon Wright. So, they're pretty much, they got Clint Capella, they got Onyeka Okongwu at the 5. They're pretty much, and Gorgie Dang is still there. They're pretty much, their whole team is pretty much it's their full repertoire of players. So, we're going to see what happens. But I'm thinking, you already know what's going to happen. So unless there's a change in the rotation, you're going to see the same results. So it's a frustrating thing to watch, but I'm kind of used to it because we've been seeing it for 41 games this year, right? So you're going to see that. So that's at Atlanta tomorrow. And again, I mentioned to you guys that the schedule is not kind to the New York Knicks. It's just not kind. They play Atlanta at home tomorrow, and then that game tomorrow is part of a back-to-back, and then they go to Charlotte and play, who's also fighting for the play-in spot. So they got Atlanta, then they fly to Charlotte the next night, Wednesday. Then Friday, they play in Miami. Then next Sunday, they play in Detroit, and that's not going to be easy. Sadiq Bey, Jeremy Grant, Cade Cunningham are all playing the best ball of the season right now for them. So that's going to not be easy at Detroit. Then that's a back-to-back. And the following day, next week, Monday, a week from today, they're at home against Chicago, who's also fighting for playoff position. Then after that, on Wednesday night, they play Charlotte at home. And that's again, and then Saturday, Cleveland at home. Then you got a back-to-back with Cleveland and Orlando. Another young, hungry team is Orlando. So this schedule is not kind. Tom is doing this 8-man rotation thing at the very wrong time. And the Knicks will be mathematically eliminated officially, probably during this stretch. I mean, probably by the time you get to Sunday in Detroit, you'll probably be mathematically eliminated unless something changes that we don't know. But I want to see the younger. I want to see Deuce McBride, Obi Toppin, Emmanuel Quickly, Quentin Grimes. I want to see them on the floor together. I want to see them on the floor together. I want to see how they flow for these last games to see what we have. And that's it. That's it. It's very simple to me. Tom makes it complicated because of stubbornness turning into stupidity, but it's not that complicated. So let's see what the Knicks do. Let's see what Leon Rose and Worldwide West and them approach Tom about, because that's what they're going to have to do, like they did against the Clippers. And then all of a sudden we won 3 games in a row, if you remember. And then Tom defaulted back to what he does, and there was that. So let's see what happens here going forward. I'm much more somber at this point because of this. I would be more excited if they do talk to him and we start to see the young players for the last 10 or 11 games of the season. That would be very nice. And then, of course, the draft is going to be interesting because, like I said, unless the Knicks are a top 3 in the draft, they'll probably trade the pick. And they're going to trade it in combination with something. And get what? I don't know yet. We're going to find out. It's going to be exciting to see, though. And so we'll see what happens at this point. And then, of course, there's the free agent market. And we don't know what's going to happen there. There's the trade market. I'm expecting both Alec Burks. I'm going to give you an 85% chance that Alec Burks and Nerlens Noel are traded. There's probably I would give it about a 60% chance that Fournier could be traded. And I say 60 because of the shooting that he's provided in his last half of the season. Okay. There's probably a 60% chance that he gets traded. It's not strong. He may come back, but he may also get traded. People want shooters, and he's a good shooter. So, we'll see what happens. And so that's going to make it an interesting summer. So we'll see what happens going forward. Derrick Rose will come back probably next season. And so he's going to be, I think he's going to be here unless something happens that's so tremendous, like a Donovan Mitchell or something like that, that we need his salary to make it work. Other than that, I think you'll see Derrick Rose back. He's important, especially for the second unit. He's a second unit guy. Starting him is ridiculous. And if Tom does that, he should be fired because Derrick Rose is going to be 34, beginning of next season. He's a tremendous still talent off the bench for your second unit. And so, we'll see what happens, but it's going to be an interesting summer. So now that's the next move. So let's see what happens against Atlanta tomorrow night. And then I'm looking for the management, the front office, to tell Tom Thibodeau what he needs to do. And Tom Thibodeau being, even though he's stubborn, when Worldwide West and Leon says this is what you have to do now, he's going to do that. I believe he will. I believe they talked to him in Los Angeles. He made a temporary change, which caused a 3-game winning streak. Then he went back to what he was doing before, and now the Knicks lost. Now, actually, they've been playing pretty well, but, again, there was a 3-game winning streak because he was, playing. First of all, Deuce McBride was playing 20 minutes a game in the 3-game winning streak. He hasn't since, and since the 3-game winning streak, the Knicks are 2-3. With the 2 wins coming against Portland, who was basically a G League team, and Washington, who's out of the playoffs, right? So they've lost 3 and won 2 since he's reduced McBride's minutes. Okay, that's a fact. Period. I know some of you are going, it's not unproduced. Well, I happen to think it is. So you can disagree, but I don't think that's an anomaly. I don't think that's a coincidence. So anyway, we'll see what happens. But against Atlanta, it's going to be a must-win. A must-win game for the Knicks. It's a must-win. There'll be 6 full games behind Atlanta, and I think 7 full games behind Charlotte. Okay, with at that point, it'll be 10 games to play. So it's going to be on national TV. We'll see what happens. But in the meantime, enjoy your Monday, if there's such a thing. Happy Monday. Shalom.